Hey class, here doing week 4 assignment, our second mock session in the exploration stage of helping. I am once again accompanied by my amazing wife, and she is on camera now, so super excited. Had to drag her on, not really, but we are going to begin our mock session of the exploration stage, kind of part 2. And practice some of the skills we learned in the reading. So, with that, we will begin. Hello, Ben. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Tired.
Tired?
Yeah. Long week.
Yeah. Since the last time we met, anything crazy or cool happened? Exciting?
I just got back from a contract week.
Okay.
Leading worship at a summer camp.
Nice. Where's that at?
Up in Prescott, Arizona. Nice. Very, very fun.
Better weather.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And how long? It was a week, you said?
Yes.
Nice. That's awesome. So our last session was really just about getting to know you. I want to continue to get to know you a little better today, but also dive into kind of why you chose therapy and why you wanted or seeked out to do therapy. So I understand that we talked briefly about your family last time.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want to, I really want to talk more about your family, because that was kind of the reason why you wanted to come to therapy, was talk through some family, maybe hurt, or just your relationship with your parents. So I guess it's like briefly, or like as a synopsis, like what is that situation? What's the home like? I know that you're moved out and you're living with your husband. But when you were living there, and kind of even now, like what is that relationship like, or what was it like?
So growing up, it was really great.
Mm-hmm.
As a child, I most vividly remember my relationship forming with my parents, probably around when I was 5
Mm-hmm.
or so. And we moved out to Vegas for my dad's job. Before that, I was born in Reno, and
Okay.
then moved to Lake Tahoe, and then moved to Carson City, all Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was 5, we moved out to Las Vegas, and that's where I spent most of my childhood at, 5 to 18. So
Okay.
big portion of my life was there. When we were there, it was at the peak of the housing market, and my parents bought a house, and then the market crashed.
Okay.
And so they were underwater, and during the 2008, there was a lot of marriage fights over money and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that derailed our relationship, because they were primarily focused on keeping the family afloat.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't so much on parenting; it was more so on figuring out their own finances and figuring out that stuff. And so I think older sister role kind of stepped in. I understood that things cost money. I always felt bad. Back to school would come around, my mom was like, let's go shopping, and I just felt terrible about going shopping and buying anything. I was like, I don't need anything, I'm good. I just remember vividly my little sister had no concept and grasp, and still doesn't, of money and being willy-nilly with it. And I remember just always having a deep fear of money, because I heard my parents fighting so much about it.
Mm-hmm.
And not wanting to burden them. And then around my senior year, my dad ended up getting a job promotion, which was super, super awesome,
Mm-hmm.
out here in Arizona.
Okay.
And so around that time, I was finishing up high school. I had just purchased all the senior stuff,
Mm-hmm.
cap and gown, whatnot. And so my mom, my sister, and me lived at a church friend's house until I turned 18, and then they all moved out here and got my sister started.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished up my senior year, the last handful of months on my own.
Mm-hmm.
In Vegas. They trusted me enough to just
Yeah.
live on my own. They weren't sending me money because I was living for free, and I still had a job, so I could pay for gas and obviously food and whatnot if I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to. And they moved out here, which is super weird, because I feel most parents don't do that.
Yeah.
And then I started a summer job, and so
Okay.
I was away from home all summer working at a summer camp, and then started college. And from that point on, senior year, I feel I just was being an adult, and they were being adults
Mm-hmm.
elsewhere. And our relationship ever since then hasn't really been I looked at them as parent figures. I think from a very young age, I haven't like, they weren't sources of people I could trust. But from that point on, even more so, I'm like, you're grown adults, not really my parents. And I'm a grown adult doing my own thing. And they still have like the sentimental, like I changed her diaper and see you as my daughter. But for me, I never really saw them as like mom and dad. I just saw them as people who, you know, said they loved me, funded everything, and to them that's love.
So do you feel like there was you said that like at your senior year you felt that like disconnect. Do you think that started in that when you were explaining like when the housing stuff was happening and the financial stuff? Do you feel like that was the start of that disconnect, or do you think it was hard fast like that senior year?
I think it's like when you lose your luster or like wonder of your parents. That definitely started it. Like all of a sudden they weren't superheroes, they were like real human beings with problems. And I learned that like when I was like 8 years old. And then in like it was 7th grade, I started cutting myself and was super depressed. And I remember finally after like a church summer camp, like wanting to tell my parents that I had cut myself and like this is a thing that's happened. And I told them, and their response was very jarring both ways for either of them. They both went upstairs, fought about it. My dad was screaming, cussing at my mom that I needed to go to a psych ward. My mom's like, she's absolutely fine, she's just being dramatic. And so I think like also that on top of it, so like a handful of years after, already a lot of fighting turmoil between them two. And then that on top of that, I'm like, they actually don't care about me and how I'm doing. They care about like the status and like, I don't know. It just felt like they didn't like truly were there for me. So from that point on, I just kind of put walls up against them.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. That's definitely not fair on your end. Do you think that, what were your general feelings in this whole time? So like throughout this process of this disconnect, and you just shared a little bit, but what were like the feelings you had towards your parents? Like, are you still carrying some of those feelings potentially?
I definitely don't think I'm like carrying active feelings. There's probably like unopened like trauma there. But like it's like one of those things that ever since then, I was like at the time with the housing market crash, them fighting all the time, like for 2 years straight. I found out later, like our house was like, they were about to lose the house if they didn't work out, and Nevada worked out some weird thing where you could promise to pay it back in a certain like amount of time, like 10 years from now, and then you could keep the house, or if you don't agree to do that, like you lose the house. And so they worked out some deal. So they were going through like a lot of stress on their end. I didn't realize that from like my point of view. I just knew they were upset with each other. I thought they were gonna get a divorce. So I think I was like really scared of them, especially like my dad's anger towards like my mother. Well, like my dad's a spender, my mom's a saver, so she was always like, my mom handled the bills, but my dad didn't. But like obviously a lot of it's out of their control in a certain degree. So I think I was just scared for their relationship, and I didn't understand the vastness of like complexity. And then on top of that, like from there, they were focused on themselves and their finances, which affected all of us, but not on like, how's my daughter doing in school? How's she feeling in the midst of hearing us like curse and slam doors and whatnot and angrily drive off for the night and blah blah blah. So I was like really scared, and then with like the whole cutting thing, I just felt like really abandoned by that. I think I can like source back a lot of like my Enneagram like to like that moment where I realized like the people that are supposed to love me actually aren't there for me. And I felt very alone already. That was like part of the reason why I was struggling making friends, X, Y, and Z. And from that point on, I think it broke trust and like being able to confide in my parents. And so I just threw up walls, and I still have walls because in the midst of trying to open up to them, they've like are like recently re-established that they're not really to be trusted because they break that trust over and over again. So.
You mentioned the housing market, that whole process, your senior year in Vegas, and then you moving here to Arizona to start college. Now, when you were what was the college experience like as far as like the home life goes? Were you living on campus? Were you living at home? What was that kind of setting, and what was that situation like?
I was living at home, trying to save money.
Yeah.
It was like something my parents were completely fine with.
Okay.
As long as I was going to school, I could live at home for free.
Okay.
They weren't going to help with college any other way.
Mm-hmm.
So, financially, everything was on me. They co-signed on loans, so I much appreciate that.
Yeah.
So yeah, living at home. Shortly after moving back here from that summer job, and like after using up my graduation money for stuff, I had to get a job. So I was pretty much like working or at school.
Yeah.
I was not at home all too often.
Mm-hmm.
That first like semester, my parents were a little angry because they didn't see me very often. And granted, like I was making friends at school and trying to get plugged into social life as well, on top of being a full-time student, like 18 credits,
Mm-hmm.
and working when I can, and then trying to make events and whatnot, so I can make friends, and started dating like freshman year as well. So I was just like gone. They were a little upset about that. And then from that point on, they didn't really care too much about my presence, like being
Mm-hmm.
at home.
Mm-hmm.
I think because they realized like I'm busy.
Yeah.
So I was like living at home literally only to sleep.
Yeah.
And even like when it comes to like eating meals, like I barely ate meals with them. Maybe on a weekend they would want to go grab food. But then shortly after, like towards the end of my year there, and then that summer I ended up starting to date a guy who lived out in Mesa. And he lived really far away.
Yeah.
And so I would spend like most of my weekends with him and his mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like they had their struggles, and but then when you moved here, they were trying to do you think they were trying to maybe like rebuild the relationship? Do you think they noticed that there was a lack of relationship, or were they just doing the same things?
I don't know if it was, because even in high school I was relatively busy
Mm-hmm.
with school, job, friends, like church events, whatnot. So I don't think they were trying to rebuild necessarily. I think after being gone for a whole summer and then coming back, and it being, and also the part of my senior year that my parents kind of missed. Yeah, I think like it was mainly my mom that's like, I never see you around, blah blah blah. But that point on, they stopped caring as much. So I would like stop out, because my mom's office, work office was like right outside my door, so I would always like stop in and have like a 5-minute chat with her before I would like leave if I had time. So I think that like filled up her cup a little bit with relationship. Like that's all she needed. I didn't enjoy like spending alone time with either parent, primarily because my dad was really awkward, like socially awkward, and I'm socially awkward, and it just like there wasn't much to talk about unless I had car issues, and he would like spend however long helping me fix my car and talking about all the things I should do. And then for my mother, she would just spend primarily all her time talking about my little sister and problems with my little sister, and so like, which is totally fine, and she probably needs someone to vent, because my parents both didn't really have friends here in Arizona for a while. So I think she needed someone to vent to, but it wasn't primarily like about her or about me. It was about my little sister, which after a certain point, I'm like, figure it out, you're a parent.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, again, this journey. It takes some time, and just getting to know you more helps me to be able to help you best. So I appreciate you sharing and being honest and vulnerable. I'm sorry that all that happened and the way it happened, but I'm glad that we're here today, and you're starting this journey, and I'm hopefully I'm really excited to help you out and get you some help. So that'll wrap us up for today, and then we'll see you next time. So have a good week.
You too.
Thank you.